Meseches Megillah Daf Yud Gimel continues working through the Megillah and the Purim story, explaining it pasuk by pasuk as we go. The beginning of the Daf discusses the term Yehudi, and the Gemara will show that someone is called a Yehudi if he rejects Avodah Zarah. Along the way, we'll also stop and discuss the tznius of Rachel, that she did not give the simanim to Leah. So let's begin. The Gemara says anyone who rejects Avodah Zarah is called a Yehudi. That's why Mordechai was called Yehudi, and we're going to show that from Basia, daughter of Paro, who was called Yehudia. So the Gemara brings psukim in the Divrei Hayamim, which identifies Yehudia as Basia. So the Gemara quotes, Ve'ishtei ha-Yehudia yolda es Yered avi Gidor ve'eschever avi Socho ve'esikusiel avi Zenoch ve'elu b'nei Bisya bas pari asher lokach mored. So this is a pasuk the Gemara has a hard time understanding. The Gemara says first it calls her Yehudia, then it calls her Bisya, lists all of her children, and says that she was married to Mered. So Gemara says first of all, is she Yehudia or is she Bisya? What's her name? So Gemara answers that she's called Yehudia because she rejected Avodah Zarah. Her name was Basia. She is Bisya, the daughter of Paroi. And as we said, when she went down to the river where she met the child Moshe in the basket, that was because she was going to the mikvah to be megayer, to convert and reject the Avodah Zarah of her father's house. That's why she got the name Yehudia. Now the Gemara analyzes this pasuk further. The Gemara says that all these children that are listed here are all different names of Moshe Rabbeinu himself, but Basi didn't give birth to Moshe. Why are they called her children? They called her children because she raised him as an orphan. If you ever raise an orphan child, they are called your child. Now, how do the names all refer to Moshe? So the Gemara says that Yered is one of the names for Moshe because it means to go down. Moshe calls the mun to come down with his tefillos. Gidor because he fixed the breaches in Israel, he fixed the fences. That's by giving them the Torah. He's called Chever because he made a relationship between Klal Yisrael and their father in heaven. He made a partnership between them, a Chaver. He's called Socho because he was like a protective covering for Klal Yisrael with his tefillos. He's called Yekusiel because through him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu were kaveh to kel, they hoped towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's called Zanach because he made Klal Yisrael have their sins cast off, be thrown off, Zanuach, with his tefillos. Now, he's called Avi Socho, Avi Gedor, and Avi Zanuach, so the three Avis are separate. One is to show that he was the Av B'Torah, he was the leader in a Torah. It was Av B'Chachma, the leader in wisdom, and Av B'Navias, and the leader of all prophets. Now, the pasuk also says that this woman, Basi, was married to Mered. This one says, who's Mered? We see in Psukim earlier that Basi was married to Kalev. Somewhere says that Kalev is called Mered because he rebelled against the spies. He rebelled against the Meraglim, and it was a good marriage between Basia, who rebelled against her father's Avodah Zarah, and Kalev, who rebelled against the Meraglim. The Gemara now goes back to the Megillah. So we saw that Mordechai is described as Asher Hagam Yerushalayim Im Hagal Asher Hagla Yechania. He was exiled from Yerushalayim with the people who were exiled from Yerushalayim in the times of Yechania. Says the Gemara, he wasn't sent into exile himself. He chose to go because he went with those who were exiled. That's what it says. So therefore, he went optionally to help them to set up Talmidei Chachamim and yeshivas over there. All right. Next it says Vayiomen es Hadassah. He raised Hadassah. The Gemara wants to know why is she called Hadassah and Esther, right? He Omen es Hadassah, he Esther. So why is she named Hadassah or is she named Esther? So we have a brisa that lists 5 different understandings of what her real name was and why she had another name. So according to the first tribe, which is Rabbi Meir, her name was Esther. She was called Hadassah because she was a tzaddikia. She was a righteous woman, and the tzaddikim are all called Hadassim, like it says in a nevuah of Zechariah, where he saw Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, and they are referred to as Hadassim. Next is Rav Yehuda's approach. He says her real name was Hadassah. She was called Esther from the word Masteres. She concealed her lineage and did not reveal it to Achashverosh, as it says, Ein Esther Magedes, Es Maladatov Esema. Third approach is Rabbi Nechemia. He says her name was really Hadassah. She was called Esther from the word Istahar, like the moon, because she was viewed by the nations as being as beautiful as the moon. Fourth approach is Ben Azai, who says that she was called Hadassah, because she was not too tall and not too short. She was just the right height, like a Hadass plant, which is the right height. Next, Rabbi Shimon Karcha. He says her real name was Esther. She was called Hadassah because she had a greenish complexion, and Hadassim are green. Nevertheless, she did have a chut shel chesed. Everyone did find her to be beautiful. Okay, the Megillah goes further, and it says, Ki ein la'av va'im, and then it says, V'mais aviyah ve'ima. She had no father and she had no mother. And it says, when her father and mother died, Mordechai adopted her. So why does it say twice that she had no father and mother, and then her father and mother had died? So Gemara says to show that she had no father or mother even for a moment. Her father died while her mother was pregnant with her, and her mother died in childbirth, and therefore she never had a parent for an instant. Now, Mordechai took her as a daughter, it says. L'kacha Mordechai loy levas. So the Gemara brings a brayso that says in the name of Rabbi Meir, levas could be read as lebayis, to a home, which means Mordechai took her as a wife, not just as a daughter. Now the Gemara shows that the term bayis could be that the term vas, daughter, could be explained as a bayis, which is a home, and that could also mean a wife. And this comes from the mashal that was said by Nasan Hanavi to David HaMelech when he took Bathsheba from Uriah Chiti. So the mashal that was given was a poor man who just had one sheep to his name, and he was very dear to him, but it was stolen by the rich man. So over there it's described as follows. The poor man had nothing except one little sheep that he bought. He raised her and she grew together with him and his children. She would eat from his bread, drink from his cup, and she slept in his bed. And she was like a daughter to him. So Gemara says she slept in his bed, she wasn't like a daughter to him, she was like a wife to him. So kibas must mean kibayis, which is meant to be interpreted as a house, meaning a wife. Okay, next it says that Esther had Sheva Na'ara. She had 7 maidservants. Gemara says that the 7 were to help her keep track of the days of the week. She had 1 each day, and therefore she could find out when Shabbos was, because when the one specific maid who came for Shabbos came, then she knew it must be Shabbos. Now, and then it says that Haggai changed for her. He changed for her and changed for her maidservant. So what did he change for her exactly? What did he do differently for her than to everyone else? Shmuel says it was about food. Rav says he gave her kosher food. Shmuel says he gave her the fattiest, most juiciest hog, pig food. And according to some Rishonim, she ate it because she was allowed to. She was an onus. According to other Rishonim, she did not eat it. And Rabbi Yochanan says the third thing is that he fed her seeds, and she survived on seeds. Like it says about Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, that they were also fed seeds. Like it says, Vahiyah meltzer noise es pas bagam. And it says, nice lahem zaronim. And he took away their non-kosher food and gave them seeds. Okay, next. Shisha Chadashim B'Shem and Hamar. The women in Achashverosh competition beautified themselves for 6 months with oil of mar. Mar says, what's oil of mar? Schia Barabba says it's something called satakt, which is balsam oil made from the mar plant. Rav Huna says it's oil made from olives that are only 1/3 grown. Where it says you use that, it's called shemen unpakinon. You use that in order to help, you smear it on skin and it makes the hair come off and it causes the skin to glow. Okay, next it says, the way the thing worked was that the women would come one at a time to Achashverosh in the evening, and then they would leave in the morning. So Gemara says, you see from Achashverosh's disgusting behavior that he was with a different woman every night, but at least you see that it was only by night and not during the day. So you do have a bit of positive said about him here. Now it says, Vati Esther no seis chen. Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Rav Elazar says everyone thought that she was from his own nation, and therefore she was favorable in his eyes. Esther was taken to Achashverosh. It says, B'chodesh Asir Chodesh Teves, in the 10th month, in the month of Teves. Gemara says that's important because it's cold, and the body gets a special pleasure from the warmth of another body, and therefore Achashverosh got a special pleasure from Esther at the time. Now, Esther loved, the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she found favor in his eyes more than all the besulas, more than all the girls, the virgins. Where it says, which one is it, women or virgins? Where it says that Achashverosh was able to find in Esther both qualities, whichever one he preferred at any time he found within her. Next, he made a great feast to celebrate Esther. So Gemara says he was trying to get her to reveal what her nation is. Where is she from? So first she made the party and she didn't reveal. Then he canceled the taxes in her name. That's amazing, but she still didn't reveal. She sent gifts to all kinds of important people in her name, and she still would not say who she is. So next he did a second gathering of the Bisulos. This was the advice of Mordechai. Achashverosh went and asked Mordechai. He knew Mordechai was close to Esther. How do I get her to tell me where she's from? Mordechai said, well, make her jealous. Do another ingathering. Do another pageant. Maybe Esther will reveal then, but she did not, because it still says Ein Esther Magedes right after that. Okay, now the Gemara refers to the tznius of Esther, and now we're going to take a little sidestep and refer to the tznius of her ancestor Shaul and the tznius of their ancestor Rachel. So the Gemara says that there is a pasuk in Eov, Lo yigra mitzadik einav ves melachim lakise vayoshivim lenetzach vayigbahu. Hashem does not take away his eyes from tzaddikim until the kings of the throne, he establishes them forever, and they are exalted. So Lo yigra mitzadik einav, that he doesn't take away his eyes from tzaddikim, the Gemara says means that he gives schar for tzaddikim in later generations. They have schar in their time, and the schar continues in generations later. Rachel had a special tznius, and as a reward she got Shaul. Shaul had a tznius, and as a reward he got Esther. So tznius could refer either to modesty or humility. What was the tznius of Rachel? So Gemara explains at length. Gemara says when Yaakov met Rachel, the pasuk says that he told her that Achi Aviyahu, he is her father's brother. Gemara says not her father's brother. His mother was the father's brother. He's her father's nephew. So Gemara says what he means is as follows. Rachel had said, Yaakov had said to Rachel, I would like to marry you. She said, yes, I would love to, but you should just know that my father is a big trickster, and he will fool you. So he said, Achiv ani b'ramas, I am a brother of his in deceit. I'm up to the challenge of handling him. And that's why he said, Achi Aviyahu. Now, he said, what's the trick that he plans to do? What does he want to fool me? So Rachel explained, I have an older sister. He's not going to marry me off before he marries her off. So he said, okay, I'll deal with that. Rachel said, are you allowed to trick somebody? He said, yeah, it says, Im navar ti tavar v'im yikesh tispatal. Yeah, you deal straight with a straight person, you deal crooked with a crooked person. So, in order to avoid Lavan's tricks, he said to Rachel, I'm going to give you signs, and therefore, if he's going to try to sneak Leah in instead, you won't have the signs, I'll know. And you'll give me the signs on the wedding night. Anyway, the wedding night arrived, and of course, Leah was brought in, and Rachel said now she's going to be embarrassed because she's not going to have the signs. So therefore, she gave up those signs to Leah. She gave them away. That's why it says, Vahiba Bakar, he Leah, in the morning, and behold, she was Leah, because up to then she wasn't Leah. She gave the signs, and therefore she was Rachel. But it was discovered in the morning that she actually was Leah. So that was a special humility on the part of Rachel to give up what was rightfully hers. As a result, she got Shaul. Shaul's tznius is that when he came back from being appointed king, he didn't tell anybody that he was king. He just spoke to his family normally. He had found out that he was about to become king, and he just spoke about the donkeys that he had lost. It didn't say anything about being the king. Okay, now the Gemara goes to the second half of the pasuk, where it says, Vayoshivim lenetzach vayigbahu. He establishes tzaddikim forever, and they become exalted. So the Gemara says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes a person great, it should stick with his family for all generations. If they become haughty, then he lowers them, as it says in the next pasuk, V'masurim bazikim yilachtun b'chavei oini. And if they're bound in chains, they will be caught in ropes of poverty. Okay, we go back to the Megillah. Mordechai Esther Osa. Mordechai did that. Esther did whatever Mordechai said. The Gemara says that means that she still kept Hilchos Nida, and she showed him her maris. If she had any shayla in the halachos, he paskined it, and she followed his psakim. Like it says, Kasha Haisa Ba'amna Itai. The Gemara says that she stayed married to him, and she would have time to visit with him, and she would get up from the embrace of Achashverosh, the Gemara says, and go and embrace with Mordechai. Next, the Megillah says, big son Viseresh. So he had big son Viseresh who made a plot to kill Ahasuerus. The Gemara says, look what Hashem does for tzaddikim. He made a king be angry at his servants in order to save tzaddikim. That's when the Sarah Mashkim and the Sarah Ophim were thrown in jail by Paro. That was in order to get Yosef out of jail, ultimately. And here you had Big Son and Seresh angry at the king. You have the servants angry at the king in order to have the tzaddik Mordechai rise to greatness, and that is because of this plot over here. Now, what exactly happened? So the Gemara says that Big Son and Seresh were Tarsim, and they were speaking the Tarsi language. They figured that Mordechai doesn't understand it. They did not know that Mordechai is from Sanhedrin, and anyone from Sanhedrin had to speak all 70 languages on the planet. Now, what were they saying? They said, from the day this woman came to the palace, we didn't get any sleep. Achashverosh is up all night with her. He's busy with her, and therefore he's constantly asking us for food and for drinks, and we don't get any chance to sleep. So we gotta poison him. We'll put poison in his drink, and then we'll be able to solve the problem altogether. Now, one of them said to the other, we don't have the same job in the palace, and therefore we're going to have a problem. We're not going to be able to fill up our plan. Mepharshim explained why that was an issue. And therefore they made up between each other that one of them will do the job of both of them while the other one goes off to carry out the plan. And that's what the Megillah means when it says that they investigated the matter. Investigated the matter, and they found it out to be true because they were not found at their positions. They weren't at their posts the way they were supposed to be. Okay, next the Megillah says, Achad var ma'ela, after these things, Achashverosh made Haman exalted a great high position. So Gemara says, Achad var ma'ela, why do you mean after these things? What does that have to do with what came before? So Gemara explains that whenever HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings a troubling event to Klal Yisrael, he first has created the cure. The refuah is there first. It was only after the refuah existed, where Esther was the queen, and Achashverosh had found out about the plot through Mordechai. Only after all the things were already set up that the trouble of Haman began. Now, with the nations of the world, it's not that way. The Gemara says about Klal Yisrael, you have a pasuk that describes it. It says, Kirafi li Yisrael v'nigla avon Ephraim. First you have a cure, and then you have nigla avon Ephraim. The sin of Ephraim is revealed. Case of the nations of the world, it's not that way. Like it says, V'nagav Hashem Mitzrayim, Nogav v'rafai. Hashem will strike Mitzrayim, strike them, and then create healing for them. Okay, so Haman wanted to kill Mordechai. So it says, it wasn't enough to kill Mordechai. Then he wanted to go after Amma Mordechai. The Gemara says that refers to Talmid Chachamim. Then he wanted to go after all the Jews. So he started with Mordechai, then all the Chachamim, then to go after Klal Yisrael. So the Megillah says he cast lots, and it fell in the month of Adar. So Haman was happy when it fell in at the month of Adar because he knew Moshe Rabbeinu died during that month, as can be figured out from the Psukim. Did not know that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born in that month, which we learned from the fact that he says, Ben Mei Vesem Shana Anechi Hayoim, I'm 120 years old today, that today, the day he died, was also the day of his birthday. Alright, the Megillah says that Achashverosh listened to Haman, and Haman said, Yeshnei Am Echad, Mefuzor u'Mefayrod ben ha'amim b'chol medinais ma'chusecha v'dasem sheneis mikolam v'stasei melech einam oizim v'lamelech ein shevel hanicham. Haman said that Achashverosh is a certain nation spread and scattered amongst the nations, all the nations in your kingdom. Their laws are different from the other nations. They don't do the king's laws, and there's no benefit to the king. Shouldn't tolerate them. So Gemara says, oh wow, Haman knew how to slander people, step after step, one after another. Listen to what he said over there. First of all, he said, Yeshnai. Yeshnai means Yoshnu. They were asleep from doing a mitzvah. Achashverosh said, I'm afraid that their God will take revenge on me. He said, no, they're asleep from doing the mitzvahs. Then Achashverosh said, but there are still Talmid Chachamim who are doing the mitzvahs. On that he said, Am Echad. No, they're one nation. They're responsible for each other, and the Talmid Chachamim are therefore responsible for the sins of the others. Okay, then he said, Mefuzar. They're scattered around. Don't think that if we kill them all, we're going to have a big hole, an unpopulated area. No, it'll be fine. They're mefuzar. Now, maybe you think they do something that is useful for us. No, they're mefayro. They're like a parrot, like a mule. They don't produce anything useful. Maybe you think that one of our medinos will become dysfunctional if they lose all the Jews. No, because they're spread out. B'chol medinos ma'chosecha. They're evenly dispersed. Their laws are different from our laws. They don't eat our food. They don't marry our women, and their women don't marry our men. They don't do the laws of the kings because they don't work. They spend all day going Shahi Pahi, Shahi Pahi. Shahi stands for Shabbos Hayom, Pahi stands for Pesach Hayom. They always have a reason not to do anything. There's no benefit for the king to keep them. they make fun of you. They eat and drink and they make fun of you. If a fly falls in a glass of wine, they'll take it out and drink the wine. If you touch a glass of wine, then they'll throw it out, the entire glass of wine. Now, so Haman said further, if it pleases the king, write down to destroy them, and I'll pay you 10,000 kikar of silver. As Gemara says, Rish Lakish says, the Kadosh Baruch Hu knew that Haman was planning on weighing out shkalim to destroy Klal Yisrael, and therefore he made a mitzvah of shkalim. First, we have our mitzvah of shkalim, which comes in the first of the month of Adar, before his shkalim, which was aimed for the 13th of the month of Adar. Next, the Megillah says that the king said, keep your money and do as you see fit. The Gemara says it's like a person who had a field with a big hole in it, and his neighbor had a field with a big mountain in it. And they each wanted each other to help them out. The guy with the mountain was looking for somewhere to put his mountain so he could have a flat field, and the guy with the hole was looking for something to fill in his hole so he could have a flat field. Finally, somebody brought the two of them together, and they offered to pay each other. One offered to pay the other to move the mountain into the hole. The other one said, no, it's exactly what I need. Don't need you to pay me. I just need you to solve my problem. So too, Haman and Achashverosh got together. Haman wanted to destroy the Jews. Achashverosh wanted to destroy the Jews. Haman gave him a way to do it, and therefore there was no need for any payment to be involved.